Welcome back to the podcast. We are here recording from the NCEA, the National Catholic Education Association Conference. It is the 2026 conference. A lot of people are here. We've gotten to meet some awesome speakers, as well as some teachers, some superintendents. And how's it been?
It's been intense, is what it's been. Like, we're on day 3, and it's just been amazing to talk with all of these folks with such rich, deep experience in the world of Catholic education. We talked to John DeJak from the USCCB about what he's seeing around the country that's really energizing and exciting for him, particularly with the renewal of Catholic education. We have talked to teachers about how to do integration across the curriculum and how to get their particular discipline integrated well into the school. So we've talked to a lot of wonderful teachers. I'm trying to think who else we've talked to some great administrators too about different things that they're seeing and that they're excited about. But yeah, it's been amazing.
Yep. What's really fun about these conferences too is getting to see other Catholic International community members, whether it be alumni. We've met some adjunct faculty here, a board member of ours. Given that we're fully online, we don't always have that opportunity. So that's been a huge gift.
Right. Yeah. It was totally. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun to have people come up to the booth and say like, oh, I know you, or didn't you used to be Catholic Dissonance? Well, yes, we did. Yep. And just talk to them about how their time with Catholic International has impacted their career and set them on a whole new trajectory. So it's been a great gift.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are going to go ahead and roll through those interviews now, so you have a chance to watch them. But it's been a great time, and I'm super glad we were able to join.
We've had fun. We've drank a lot of coffee.
Yeah, lots of coffee. All right, enjoy.
Okay, so today we are here talking with Yvonne Boldt, who teaches science at Providence Academy in Plymouth, Minnesota. And she is... She's been working on this question of how to teach science integrally within the liberal arts, so that it's not kind of off doing its own thing, but that it's really brought into the liberal arts experience for students. And I think she has a lot to teach us today. So, Yvonne, welcome.
Thank you.
I wanted to start by asking you to tell us a little bit about your project that you did with the Duc and Altum project. You had a fellowship with them, correct? On how your question was about how to teach science integrally, and they assigned you a mentor.
They did assign me a mentor, yes. So, so Duc and Altum is a fairly new, I guess, has been around for about 10 or 12 years now, but just organization of Catholic schools being intentionally, faithfully Catholic. And so they look for people to come and actually propose their own fellowships. And I was just really interested in this integration of faith and science question, mainly because I had learned that a fair number of young Catholics were identifying science as one of the reasons they stopped believing in God or left the faith.
Yes.
And honestly, my initial project was only to investigate at Providence Academy, what are we doing already naturally by way of integrating faith and science, both in our religion classes and in our science classes. And then by understanding that, asking the next question, okay, where do we want to go from here to increase the integration and in a meaningful way?
Right. So to your mind, what are the chief challenges of teaching science integrally in a liberal arts school or in a Catholic school? You've been teaching for years, and there are pitfalls, of course, in this. But what do you see as being the main challenges? And then what are some of the things that you suggest about how to overcome them?
Okay, well, I guess I would identify 2 that immediately came to mind.
Okay.
And the first is the textbooks that we're using to teach science in the high school, and I think just science textbooks in the West in general, assume materialism, even though those textbooks aren't teaching philosophy.
Right.
They assume that the material world is all there is.
Yes.
And so that approach sets you up for teaching as if that's what you believe, right? That the physical world is all there is. And in fact, the majority of us science teachers in Catholic schools, even if we embrace our Catholic faith and take it seriously, we were raised and trained in science with this metaphysical materialism backdrop.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so we're not used to even thinking about our subject from what you're calling the liberal arts perspective
Right.
under philosophy or under theology, right?
Right.
As the queen of sciences.
Right. So what's your solution to this? What do you think needs to be done, and what are you doing now in your classroom to address this?
Okay. So one of the main things I'm doing is I've really come to see philosophy, specifically some key ideas in metaphysics that Aquinas adopted and built on from Aristotle. So things like substance, the idea of substance as form and matter, the four causes, even just especially this idea of a formal cause in living things being the soul, that all living things have a soul.
Right.
So that's really what I've come to see as the important connector between the science and then the theology. All right, so that the students can see that it all fits together.
Right.
I have some other areas of integration. For example, in our genetics unit, we actually do connect to some Catholic moral teaching about the sacredness of marriage and how that impacts what kinds of gene therapy treatments are morally acceptable for the Catholic Church versus morally illicit. So that's a second way, but I would definitely say these key ideas in metaphysics from Aristotle and Aquinas lay down the foundation and enable the connection.
So one of the things that I've seen in talking with parents and undergraduate students in particular over the last 10 years is there's a lot of discomfort around science. Like they feel that science is somehow another religion that is going to undermine the parents' ability to pass on the faith, or the students' ability to believe, that it'll somehow undermine belief. And so sometimes what I've seen is using more Protestant sorts of approaches to thinking about like creation, for instance, like young earther, or different kinds of approaches to science that are more theological and then downplay the actual scientific method, the actual science itself. And so I'm wondering, how can we help people be more comfortable with the language of science, with the methods of science, and assure them that this is one way to seek the truth. And all, of course, Newman, all disciplines reveal to us something about the Creator and something about God. How can we help parents understand that science isn't necessarily in competition with faith?
Okay, I think we're going to come back to philosophy again, right?
Yeah.
We've called, I think, not an expert on this, but that philosophy has been called the handmaid of theology, right? I don't know who said that first, but I think that's really true, right? And then another thing that people don't realize is the scientific method really does come from philosophy, right? So we've kind of dropped philosophy out of our education. We don't have that as some sort of a general course that our students take, and yet it's the one that connects science to theology. It's the one that accepts or connects all these other sort of specialty areas back under one umbrella, and then bringing them thereby under theology and our faith. So we've got to bring that back for everyone, right?
Right. So philosophy is the key.
Philosophy's the key.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Yvonne, for taking your time to talk with us a little bit more about teaching science integrally. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Welcome back to the NCEA. We're here today talking with somebody I know really well. This is my husband, Laurence Brodeur, and he teaches history at Providence Academy here in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And he's a trained historian. And so today we are going to be talking about how to teach historical thinking. He's very good at it. We have lots of conversations over the dining table and in the living room about how to do this. So I thought I would give you an inside peek on what some of our conversations look like. So, honey, how's the conference been so far?
Well, thank you for having me, for one thing, because this is an honor to be able to be here. It's going well. It's very young. I mean, this started today, started this morning. Bishop Cousins was fantastic. A great talk about love, about tending to the heart, the role of Catholic educators. I think that was great and very inspiring.
Okay. So a little bit about you. So Laurence did his training in history at the University of Toronto. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you today is about how to teach historical thinking in the classroom. And when does that begin, in a K-12 sort of situation? How does that change over the course of a student's trajectory? And then, even if you want to talk a little bit about it from the standpoint of Catholic education in general. So anything you want to talk about?
Well, it's a great question. It's a big question.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine because this is the kind of it's the kind of question that every history teacher comes to at one point. How do I teach them to think about a topic in a very specific way that matters to me, that matters to me as a teacher, as a historian, but also that should matter to them. So how do you formulate that? That's the tricky part.
Okay.
So every teacher that teaches history at some point is going to have to, whether they know it or not, they're going to have to face that realization. How do I think historically about something?
Okay. So one of the things that you and I talk about is how history has a very distinct method and object. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what is the object of history within the liberal arts? And then what is the method that we use to help students to think about that object in the liberal arts, the method that we use to kind of help them think historically?
Well, it starts with the question.
Yeah.
It starts with the question. So the purpose of history is always down to what makes us human. In the context of Catholic liberal arts education, it's how we collaborate with God's plan, with or against God's plan. So we talk about intention. We talk about choice that our people make and freedom.
The will, free will.
Free in freedom. How do we choose to cooperate with God's plan or against it? So this starts with the teacher, and it's really something that it's beyond. You do this before you start talking about history. You have to understand why we should bother with history to begin with, right? At all. And from there, the questions come in our relationship with God, our relationship with others in community, our relationship to self. How do we define ourselves? How do we understand the good life? What is a good life? How do we live well? And then the how, so how do we figure that out in history? So those questions are more about how do things change over time? How do we know things? What do we know? How do we know it? And how do we know them to be true? So the method, the methods are basically about how do we know things.
Right.
It's not so much about history. It's about how do we know things.
Right. So what are the questions that are particular to history that we don't find in science or that we don't find in literature? What is a historical question versus like a theological question or a philosophical question?
History is concerned with change. I mean, there's always change. There has to be a change involved, and we have to evaluate how much of a change, how long of a change, how significant of a change we're dealing with. So those questions are going to be about evidence. They're going to be about how do we know things to exist, which brings what kind of questions should we ask about those traces of evidence. They're also about continuity, change, historical significance.
Yeah.
So these are the big questions. It comes down also to historical perspectives between us and the past. How do we think about certain things today is very different from, and you're a medieval historian. You're faced with this all the time. Right. But in my field too, I do I was trained in modern European history, but things are very, very different, and we think very, very differently, or we assume things very, very differently than before. Ethical considerations are important too, because this is ultimately there's a right and wrong that we are faced with, and we make choices based on that, or people have in the past, and we're trying to evaluate what made them choose this or that. So there are ethical considerations to take into account when we do history. Objectivity is the big word in history. We can be, honestly, one of my professor was saying, we can be honestly subjective.
Okay, what does honestly subjective mean?
Well, assuming our position vis-a-vis the field. I mean, history is always incomplete, and we can only have a glimpse of what people wanted to do or what they're looking for. So it's one of those things where you have to be honest and be. Hi, sister.
I'm coming for you, sister.
Yeah. Sister, you're next.
Go to the university.
So honestly, subjective is understanding our position and a position of humility.
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis the past, vis-a-vis the actors that we explore, that we get to know, and to not necessarily be arbiters or judges, but to really explore and engage and contemplate sometimes, and to be in awe as well. So you have to know yourself quite. It's a process of self-knowledge that really is.
Right.
History gives you a lot of that.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us and chatting with us for a little bit about how to teach historical thinking. And it really begins with us, the teacher, being convinced that history matters for the liberal arts, thinking carefully about what it can help us on how we can understand the other liberal arts, and then what's particular to us as historians. What do we offer that helps to complete our unity of knowledge, our knowledge of the whole, which of course is a reflection of God himself. So, all right, thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay, we're back at the NCEA convention, and today I'm talking with Dr. Erika Kidd. Dr. Kidd is a professor of Catholic Studies at the University of St. Thomas here in St. Paul, and she has a book out on St. Augustine, and it is called Intimacy and Intelligibility, and then there's a lot more other words, but it's basically about Augustine and what he offers to us in education. So welcome, Dr. Kidd.
Thank you.
Okay, so my first question here is to give us a little overview of your book, and then maybe talk a little bit about how you see what Augustine can offer us in education. That's very broad. Take it where you want to go.
That's great. Thank you so much. So maybe I'll start with your second question and back my way into the book, since that's what I was talking about in my talk this morning. So Augustine has so much experience with education, and through his confessions, he gives us a real window into the kind of education that he received. Yeah. And it's really mixed, right? Yeah. Like it's good and bad, but mostly bad at the beginning. And so how is it bad? It's bad in a few different ways. One, that Augustine's parents were very upwardly mobile and social climbing and
utilitarian.
Right. And they wanted Augustine to get the best kind of education that he could. And they wanted him to get that for pretty utilitarian aims. It wasn't just that his parents were in love with the Roman rhetorical tradition that he was being trained in.
They wanted him to be a rhetor,
Yeah. And they wanted him to make more money, right? I mean, that's a big part of it. Yeah. So when he talks about that education, maybe one of the big things I would highlight is that those teachers were so interested in having him pronounce words correctly, not make mistakes. They were so interested in informing him, right? Like they had all this information about Terence and Sallust and all these great Roman rhetoricians, and they wanted to pass that information on to Augustine. Okay. So maybe two things. One, teaching the experience of education was very much just like Augustine was taking things in.
Right.
He was being informed But alongside that being informed, he was not receiving any real formation, right? And he talks about how people didn't care, that he was like sinful and...
This is the confessions, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly. So he's like, no one cared that my soul was wasting away, but, I wasn't dropping my H's when I pronounced words. So there was this real disorder to the education.
Right.
And kind of throughout, I would say, the confessions, and maybe I won't bore you with all the details, but there are a number of stories where Augustine has these experiences of education where he's just being kind of informed of some knowledge. And it's like Augustine is just the receptacle, someone else has the knowledge, and they're like,
dumping it in.
Yeah. Right. Like just put it in. And maybe the best example of that is talking about the Manichees, where they have this that's a religious sect that Augustine was involved with, but they have this like special secret knowledge and they want to put it into Augustine's head. So Augustine just keeps receiving.
Right.
This then experience of education contrasts really strongly with the experience of education that Augustine talks about in De Magistro, or the teacher. So that's a dialogue that Augustine had with his teenage son shortly after they were both baptized into the Catholic Church. And it starts off with this super interesting question. Augustine says to this teenage boy, what are we trying to accomplish when we speak with one another? Or just more simply, like, why do we talk to each other?
Right. Yeah.
And that then opens on this whole reflection on education and what's going on in education. And it sort of starts with the view that education, talking more generally, but education specifically, is just about informing. I have knowledge I'm trying to give to you, you have knowledge you're trying to give to me. And it's this very, it's a very kind of flat understanding of what education is. And by the end of the dialogue, that was sort of like a warming up exercise. That's not really Augustine's real view. By the end of the dialogue, Augustine develops this beautiful insight that education is really about helping students pay attention. And what are they paying attention to? They're paying attention to reality. And what's our job as teachers is to help them pay attention to reality.
To teach them to ask the right questions and to point at the thing they have to attend to.
Right, exactly. I remember when I first started teaching, I had this like platonic idea that, I really wanted to help my students fall in love. And, if they could just love the true, the good, and the beautiful, then we'd be like home free. And then I realized, like, okay, let's just like take it down a notch. What I need is to help my students pay attention. And if I can just point to reality, then it's their job. So there's this kind of mutuality. Then it's their job to attend to what I'm pointing at and come to understand for themselves whether it's true or not. And so Augustine has this great line towards the end of that dialogue, De Magistro, where he says, no one sends their child to school to learn what the teacher thinks. Like, who cares what the teacher thinks? He says, what we really want is for students, when all has been said and done, when everything's been taught, we want students to examine within themselves what's true. And it picks up really nicely on a line, I can't remember it exactly, but from the Holy Father, where he talks about, Augustine's vision of education is that we are educating students into freedom. And what's that freedom but learning to listen to and attend to reality, attend to the voice of truth, without just being sort of a receptacle for whatever it is the teacher wants to say.
So when I've taught Augustine in my foundations class, a lot of my teachers in the class kind of breathe a sigh of relief when Augustine talks about how at a certain point it's about this. It's not about what the teacher leads the student to do. It's the student willing to be led. Like that there is a role for the student in here, and that he has to be open to this, divine illumination, that the teacher can only point, but it's up to the student to look. And so many of my teachers have felt like I'm being measured on whether or not a student looks, but there's so much that I can't control about that. And so there's a certain kind of relief, I think, that comes with realizing, oh, there's a will involved here, the will of the child, exercising their freedom to look or not look. And so as a teacher, what can I do to encourage that choice to look? So yeah, there's I think a lot of freedom for teachers when they realize that God is involved in this, the child's will is involved in this. It's not just me that has to make this happen. So.
And there's so much going on in teaching for better and for worse.
The dynamic is,
that we just don't control, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like initially I found that kind of demoralizing and debilitating. Like I made this amazing lecture and, right, I don't see anybody writing anything down.
Right.
But then it's also a grace, right? Because sometimes students will come back and say, I took this from Augustine, and I think, I don't think I even said that, or I don't think I even noticed that myself. But by having the opportunity to point you in that direction, to point my student in that direction, they come to understand something that isn't just what I put into it, which is really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
So one question I want for you to ask you, and I know this is a big question, so take it wherever you wish to take it. But this is the question about the role of philosophy in education, and how can philosophy help us as educators? And where does it kind of fit in what we're doing in the liberal arts? Because I think if you're not a philosopher, philosophy can seem intimidating, but I don't think it is. And I want you to tell us why we shouldn't be scared of philosophy, and why is philosophy important?
Yeah. I am a philosopher, for better or for worse.
Right. Yeah.
And the reason I became a philosopher was because philosophy asks, what is the good life? What is the good life for a human being? Philosophy asks what it means to live well. And I just think there's no more important question to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose questions about salvation, but that is tied up in living well, right?
Yeah.
So what does it mean to live well as a human being? And I thought, I just want to dedicate my whole life to this because I want to live well as a human being. That seems good.
Yeah.
So why is it important? I mean, I think one thing that the way that it's really shaped the way that I teach is I don't feel like I'm trying to, again, inform my students. I feel like I'm trying to nurture their natural attentiveness to the world, and nurture their curiosity, a good form of curiosity, about the world, to become more attentive to the world, to become more attentive to themselves and who they are and who they're becoming. So I think, at bottom, I think philosophy is about wonder.
Yeah.
Starting from a place of wonder, and it's about attention. And those things are mutually enforcing. And actually, I think, they come out, we often don't get into philosophy until like freshman year of college. But children are natural philosophers,
asking the big questions.
Right. They're always wondering about things and fighting about things. My children argue with me about philosophy a lot. So I think, there's a lot of space. And we were just talking about this in our session about how sometimes with younger children, we really see the importance of that curiosity and cultivating attentiveness. But then sometimes we get to a point in later grades where it's more like, well, now you just need to learn these things.
It's about coverage than it is about wonder. Yeah.
Right. So, we do have to cover certain things, but I think it's important for us as teachers to think about how we can help students keep contact with that natural wonder, with that natural attentiveness to the world. And then alongside that, how they can be attentive to the way that Christ, the truth, is speaking to them in the inner man, as Augustine puts it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Erika, for joining us. And this was wonderful. We should read her book. All right, take care. All right, we're here at the NCEA. It's the first day, it's Tuesday, and I'm here with Dr. Michael Adkins, who is Dean of Academics, right? Is that your current title? At St. Agnes High School here in St. Paul, Minnesota. But he also teaches for Catholic International University as well. And I wanted to talk with Mike about kind of the state and the future of classical liberal arts education. He has been a teacher and administrator. He's been part of the classical liberal arts world for a long time. And so I thought it would be great to pick his brain about what he's seeing and what he's excited about in classical liberal arts education. So here you go.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on this podcast. It's good to see you, Anne. And yeah, it's a very exciting time in the classical liberal arts movement. Actually, and just Catholic education in general, we're seeing a huge renewal in Catholic education. And it's really about, I'd say the last decade, it was kind of about Catholic identity. And it was, how do we keep doing what we're doing normally, but we just add on some more Catholic identity. And that will fix some of our mission drift and some of our problems. And I'm seeing a major shift to really thinking about Catholic culture in a school and going deeper. And I see more and more schools open to reclaiming what I would call our birthright in the Catholic liberal arts, or some will call it classical education tradition. And so I would say even a decade ago, that was very strange. Some people would even find it weird to talk about classical education. You know, I have to give some credit to our Protestant brothers and sisters who they're about 30 years ahead of us on this front of reclaiming what was really our tradition. And so it's really come back, and there's a lot of momentum behind the Catholic liberal arts renewal movement. And so you see things. What I find really encouraging is kind of like our program at Catholic International U is you see the three major levers of education are changing. And the three major levers in the United States are teacher credentialing, ed school, accreditation, and standardized testing. And we now have serious Catholic and Christian groups who have gone into those three areas to reform them and offer alternatives where you have an integrated vision of faith and reason intersecting those worlds. So I find that really encouraging, and it's actually a really exciting time to be in the renewal of Catholic education.
It seems like those levers, as you've called them, are opening up options for schools that didn't previously exist. So the other question I wanted to ask you about the hope that you see for classical liberal arts education comes from the parent side. You know, so we're talking about the schools, but what are you seeing in the families and in parents and in what they're hoping for from a Catholic education?
Yeah. I just recently gave a talk on the Second Vatican Council's document, Gravissimum Educationis. And one of the major focuses of the council was lay action rightly ordered.
Right.
It wasn't, we need more liturgists and Eucharistic ministers. It was we need people who, like Newman said, were humble and knew their faith and were going to go out and evangelize. And you see a change from Divinus Ilius Magistri, which is a document of Pius XI. Sorry, DIM and that of Gravissimum Educationis at Vatican II. And it was clearly the priests and the religious lead everything.
Yeah.
And very much focused on that. And then there's a shift to, well, lay people need to own it, but people didn't know how to do that. And I think we're seeing the real fruit of that. And what happened after the council, there was a period of confusion, and what you had was a lot of lay parents leaning into their kids' education, and you saw the homeschool movement born out of that, both the Catholic and Protestant worlds. And a lot of those people were focused in the tradition of the seven liberal arts. And so now in 2026, we're seeing all this fruit born of, like I mentioned, the three levers, but also there's all kinds of different schooling options out there for families, to hybrid schools, to brick and mortar schools, to online schools like we have at Catholic International. and they're all now embedded in the traditional liberal arts. But you see a lot of lay-led, this is lay-led apostolates and ministries. And so I find that really encouraging. But more and more we see parents who understand better this rich tradition of education than we've ever seen. And I think a lot of that comes from the homeschool movement to offer that credit where it's due.
Okay, yeah. You mentioned a couple of papal documents there, and we talk about those documents in our class on the principles of Catholic education, and which we taught in the fall. And one of the things that struck me about the trajectory that we're on is that after Vatican II, one of the things that kind of blindsided the church was the number of priests and religious who left education. And so then it was on to the lay people to kind of fill the gap, but without that requisite preparation that a brother, a sister, a priest would have had. And now here we are in 2026, and we've got that formation available. And that's really starting to transform these Catholic schools when you've got vibrant, well-trained teachers who can really drive a mission and who can really embrace, the final ends of Catholic education and what we're about. So
I think what we've a lot of people will want to say, well, the Second Vatican Council failed. And the reality is that there is so much about the rich history of Catholic education and the traditional liberal arts classical education that up until even Pius XI's document in 1929 is just assumed. It's like an oral tradition, and it's not written down. And it's also very fashionable right now, not only to criticize the council, but John Paul and Benedict.
Yeah.
And in just preparing for this talk I gave, the amount of picking up the pieces and going back and researching the rich tradition that we assumed but didn't write down and we didn't provide. We had to develop this corpus of teaching, and it's astonishing what you see just in the realm of education from the council, which said, this Gravissimum said, this is not the end of this. This is actually, we need to open an office at the Vatican that will study this further, that will create the resources. So you see how the magisterium is a living teaching body. And then you look at what John Paul and Benedict produced in all these different various documents. It's really kind of astonishing. And so we really had to pick up the pieces of our tradition and reclaim our birthright. And that took a long time. And now we're seeing all these resources in hand.
And then with the new Holy Father, with his document, Drawing New Maps of Hope, you can see him picking that up and then encouraging us to, not only go back to the well of the church's tradition in education, but then this whole Drawing New Maps of Hope of how can we take that tradition and use it to greet optimistically and creatively the challenges that the church and the world are facing today. So I hope that he will write more and say more on this, but I was really jazzed by that particular document.
I absolutely love the document and the very opening that he's saying that we live in this technological fragmented world and going back to Newman, cor ad cor loquitur, and talking about how we need to go back, pause and go reflect back on I love the expression he used, the cosmology of Christian paideia.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, thank you for using that very strange esoteric Greek word that means the traditional liberal arts. And he did a very beautiful, quick overview of the history of Catholic education, starting with the Desert Fathers. And so if you've not read Drawing New Maps of Hope by Pope Leo XIV, please read that document. We are at a very exciting and encouraging time in the renewal of Catholic education. So this is fun.
Yeah. Okay. Well, quick question.
Yes.
How's the conference been so far for you?
It's been phenomenal. I just listened to, who is that?
Yvonne Boldt.
Yvonne Boldt, and her talk on integrating faith and reason in the biology classroom was terrific. And
Looking forward to.
Well, this morning Bishop Cousins' address was astonishing. Yeah, it was right to the heart. I'm really looking forward to Mass coming up here next because St. Agnes's altar servers and our concert chorale and madrigal singers will be featured, so you all get to experience the beauty there. So
yeah. And our friend Dr. John Boyle will be getting a papal honor at this Mass as well. So lots of exciting things. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, this is a real pleasure. Good to be with you all. Thank you so much.
Yep. We're back at NCEA Day 2, and today I have with me here Dr. Pamela Patnode, who was the former director of the Catholic School Leadership Program at the St. Paul Seminary here in St. Paul, Minnesota. She currently now teaches for that program and for the Catechetical Institute here in the city, and we are delighted to have her here with us. She is going to talk with us today about accessibility, disability, and inclusion in Catholic schools. The bishop's recent encouragement to Catholic schools around disability inclusion. How can we make Catholic education more accessible to students with a variety of needs? And I'm wondering what you see as being, kind of hopeful about that. What do you see as being obstacles to that? And what do you see as being opportunities in those areas?
Well, thank you. And this is really fun to be here and to be talking about this topic in particular here at this really remarkable convention. I mean, it's hats off to NCEA, hats off to our archdiocese for this really beautiful convention. And to be talking about Catholic schools and this idea of inclusion is really exciting. There's so much renewal right now happening in Catholic education, and it's profoundly hopeful. And this is a part of that.
Broader renewal.
Exactly, right. And it's not foreign to Catholic schools, right? I mean, first of all, it's rooted in just our understanding of the human person. It's rooted in our understanding of education, too. And from the beginning of Catholic schools here in our country, we have been including diverse students, most notably when we started with schools for the immigrants and the poor, right? And so it's really part of our heritage. And there are moments in church history where there is maybe more momentum behind it. And I think we're in one of those moments.
One of the things that the bishops have encouraged us to think about when it comes to disability and inclusion in Catholic schools is first of all, our commitment to it, that we have a deep history of being committed to those students who are on the margin. And you mentioned too, just how we view the human person, that every child has value and every child brings value to a school community. And so therefore we want these students in our schools and they are a great good for our students in our Catholic schools. However, I think both you and I know that, when a family comes to a school and they have a child with disabilities, there can be a lot of fears from the school's perspective about what should we do? And I'm wondering if you can speak to those fears a little bit, what might they be and how can we address them?
These are just such good questions. And these are the questions that people have been having and we need to continue having as we continue to look for ways to really better serve families that do have children with either diagnosed learning disabilities or families that are facing challenges of any kind. And so I think you and I, as we have talked before about this, we recognize that when we talk about inclusion, it can mean that it is a student with a diagnosed learning disability. It can be a student that has physical challenges. Maybe they're in a wheelchair. Maybe they are hard of hearing or have a vision challenge.
Challenges, cultural and language
Exactly. There's just so much. There's mental health challenges. There's, like you said, cultural. There's socioeconomic challenges. There's childhood trauma, all of that. And so as Catholic schools, when we consider wanting to be more inclusive, we are looking at a variety of needs. And I think the greatest fear that Catholic schools have is they want to serve those students well.
Yes.
And they recognize that bringing on a student with whatever the need will add challenge. And sometimes people immediately put up the roadblocks and say no to the challenge. They're afraid of adding more to the plate of their teachers, understandably so. They're afraid of adding yet more dollars to a budget that is already stretched so thin. They're afraid even perhaps of the response from parents and educators who unfortunately may not see the beauty and the potential that including students with a variety of needs can have. And really it's such a great good, not only for that student or that family, but for the whole community, quite honestly. And so I think those really are the main fears that initially percolate to the surface. And a lot of us have heard, I think this student might be better served in the public school because they already have the structure in place. But it's interesting because the experience and the research suggests otherwise. And that's really powerful, I think, for our Catholic schools to recognize that there is a lot of research out there that demonstrates that students who have attended a Catholic school typically outperform students, their peers who have attended a public school. And that includes some of these groups that we've talked about, English language learners, for example, students perhaps that have dyslexia. And so it's, but in addition to that, perhaps academic performance or social engagement in the community or landing good jobs or going on to college, military, the religious life, it's really the real goal of Catholic education is forming the whole person while leading that person to Christ. And as Catholic educators, we don't want to deny that to any student.
That's right. It's interesting. Here in our diocese, our Archbishop has responded to this call of the USCCB for greater inclusion in Catholic schools, greater accessibility, by convening a task force to look at all of these issues and to figure out how can we come alongside these schools to help support them and to support these families. So I think there's a lot of hope out there. I think the bishops are now starting to look at this seriously and then figure out how they can support these schools in their desire to answer the needs of the families that come to them. So I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot of changes in that area, which is great news, I think. And there's a lot that we can do that's easier, low hanging. How can we, train our teachers to assist these students and to help form them? How can we institutionally help support these schools, whether it's through additional support in the school or made available through the diocese? I think a lot of dioceses are going to start to look at the multiple ways that we can increase accessibility in Catholic schools for students with a variety of needs. So lots of hope, I think.
I so agree, and it's so exciting what's happening here locally in our archdiocese and really nationwide as we see more dioceses taking this seriously. And one of the things that is so exciting to me, what you have said and what I'm seeing here in our archdiocese, is I really think there's three significant, I don't know if I call them steps, but action steps, I guess, that I see that are needed. And it's whether you're talking about the diocesan level or it's your local school.
Right.
But the first one is conversation and prayer.
Yeah.
And that's what you've been a part of with this task force. It's having the conversation, whether it's your individual school or whether it's at a broader level, talking with the teachers, talking with the staff, talking with the parents, talking with the students, the broader community, to really understand the need
Right.
for your organization, because the needs of an urban school are going to look different than the needs of a rural school.
Yes.
And those will look different from the needs of a suburban school,
Right.
for example. And so understanding the needs of your community, having those conversations to gain that understanding and then take it to prayer
Yeah.
is so important. And then I love what you said next about learning and training. There is a Benedictine religious sister who has since passed away, but she worked with children with Down syndrome for 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, really, it isn't patience that we need as much as understanding.
Yeah.
We need to learn about all of these different unique needs that children bring to our schools, that our families are facing. And we need to provide that training, the understanding and the training to our staff and our faculty. And after that, what we need to do is build our team.
Yeah.
We need to look at how do we support our teachers, because it's not realistic for them to carry the weight of all of this. So what supports do they need? And then what supports do the students need? And how can we provide that, whether it's through specialists, whether it's paras, more of them, tutors, volunteers,
Right.
all of the,
All of
City
the above.
Connects, I mean, there's so many resources. But it starts with conversation and prayer, continues with learning and training, and then you build your team. So, and make your plan, and you jump in.
Right. Right.
And then you revise things as you go along and as you learn. Yeah.
Well, it's been so wonderful to talk with you about this today. I look forward to talking with you more in depth about this as we develop our class together and as we move forward in this kind of adventure of opening up Catholic education and the renewal of Catholic education to more families and more students. All right, we're back at NCEA Day 2, and we have here today with us John Paul Thurau from the CLT Classical Learning Test, and we're going to be talking a little bit today about alternatives to AP and College Board testing in schools and a whole wide range of things. So let's see where this thing goes. So JP, tell me a little bit about how you arrived at CLT, and then tell us a little bit about what CLT does.
Thanks. Yeah. So prior to working for CLT, I was immediately prior, I worked for the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education. Oh, yeah. And yeah, so I was on the school services faculty. And
Makes
so,
sense, yeah.
Yeah. And really enjoyed my time there, visiting many Catholic schools across the country and doing professional development sessions and really just helping, especially with the helping teachers reclaim the pedagogy that has been distinctive of Catholic education for the better part of 2,000 years.
Yep.
And so in that work, I prior to that work, I was actually a high school teacher and administrator. So all that time, I became familiar with CLT. And got to meet our founder, Jeremy Tate, a number of times, and just the opportunity came up where I'm now in my current role as Director of Catholic School Partnerships at CLT.
Okay, great. So tell us a little bit, So tell us a little bit more about CLT and what it's seeking to do.
Sure. I think ultimately it's about realigning assessment with mission.
Okay.
Right. Our goal is to reconnect knowledge and virtue,
Yeah.
and to seekers of truth, goodness, and beauty, right? Through meaningful assessments and connections, right? And that's our mission statement. But there is, I think it's a very underappreciated connection between assessment and pedagogy, assessment and mission, assessment and curriculum.
Right.
All of these things are very closely tied because if you'll forgive a trite expression, right? What you measure is what you treasure.
Yeah.
And so if your metric, if you will, is not aligned with your goal, how do you know that you're accomplishing your goal?
Right.
And then success on that metric is maybe achieving a very different goal, right? That you want.
Right.
So that's ultimately right. Our goal is to align our assessments with the richness and beauty of Catholic education, of high quality traditional education as it's been known, right? You don't have to be a Catholic school, right? We're not a Catholic test for it, right? But we are very aligned with the intellectual tradition of the Catholic Church and many other rich traditions of education that have been throughout the centuries.
Right. So I'm hearing you tell me that that a test like CLT is going to assist a school in maintaining that mission integrity throughout the whole school, from curriculum to environment to teaching, all of the things that you're doing in a school. It's going to assist in solidifying that mission and helping you to live it out more fully. Correct? Yeah.
That's right. And I think, and to put maybe a more concrete example on that, let's take a hypothetical, right? What if it was just generally understood that you would see someone like Thomas Aquinas on the SAT,
Right.
or you would see someone like Flannery O'Connor, or even someone like Jane Austen, right? It's not necessarily that. Well, not necessarily. We're not assessing prior content knowledge,
Right.
but what we are assessing is a student's ability to engage with a intellectually rich and deep work, passages that are more than just the length of a tweet.
Yeah.
Right. And so if that was generally understood, how do you think that would impact public school curriculum, right? Let alone Catholic school curriculum.
Right.
How would that impact? Right? Imagine if everybody just knew, I'm going to probably see somebody like Dante on the SAT.
Right.
Do you think public schools might teach Dante more often? I think probably.
Right.
And then take that one step further.
Right.
How would American culture be different
Right.
if people like Dante were in the typical public school curriculum, right? Like they used to be, right?
Right.
So in terms of that, right, providing a assessment that really encourages just day in and day out in the classroom engagement with timeless works, right? That really anybody should be exposed to this, right? Our children deserve this.
Yeah. Well, this is wonderful. You have been in the classical liberal arts world for a long time. What are you seeing that is giving you a lot of hope? What are like some of the challenges and what are some of the obstacles? But also, what's giving you a lot of hope for opportunities in this realm?
I think the thing that's giving me a lot of hope is I think more people are beginning to realize it's a very, very low barrier of entry.
Yeah.
That this idea of classical or liberal arts, whatever you want to call it, this is not something that is super niche.
Yeah.
It's not something that requires an overly specialized degree.
Right.
And I'll tell you, just even in my experience of teaching, I had a colleague who his prior job before joining the faculty was he worked at Home Depot, right? And he had a state education, just state college education, brilliant guy, right? Brilliant guy, but just did not have exposure to the classical tradition, right? So now he and I are working at this classical school together, and I was so inspired by him because he just dove in to the tradition on his own. Just went through just anything to get his hands on, and he became he became a model for me of continuing my education, and I received a classical education in college, right? But he was the one, he just embraced it and led the rest of the faculty in terms of like we can continue to enrich ourselves in this tradition and pass it on to our children, right? And so that's the kind of thing I think more and more people are realizing that these are just timeless works that are accessible to anyone. We just need to embrace it, right? And furthermore, the pedagogy itself, right, is deeply human. It's not about putting your checklist up on the board of here's the things we're going to accomplish today in our seminar, right? It's let's just talk about something meaningful, and what ends up happening is you hit the objective, right? The teacher knows, the teacher knows the work, the teacher knows the objective. The student doesn't need to know what the objective is, right? And it becomes that much more beautiful for the student because they're discovering these things on their own, right? And making the connections on their own.
I recently went to visit a classical school, and I was spending the whole day observing them, and it was beautiful to watch a seminar for their humanities class. And I could see, there were things happening on several levels. Like, sure, you're talking about the text, but I'm watching the human formation that's happening through the pedagogy. You are learning how to engage in civil discussion. You're learning how to respond or to contradict or to how to engage in healthy human conversation, seeking the truth. And I thought to myself, if more people did that, our culture would be really different. So it seems to me that there's a lot happening in classical education. It's not simply about like switching out your inputs, right, for classical inputs, but it's more about like what kind of human formation, spiritual formation you're giving a student as well. I'm wondering, through your work with ICLE, but also through your work with CLT, what are you seeing that is distinctive about classical liberal arts education that can really offer families and students a new way of seeing, being, and doing?
Yeah, wow. Well, that's a great question. I don't know if I'm going to do it justice fully, but yeah. But I guess a couple things come to mind. I mean, one is just the what's the word? Intellectual honesty, right? The sincerity about wanting to engage with the world as we see it, right? And ask why, right? And that sense of wonder, right? But not in this kind of like trite Hallmark card way, but actually, right? The way Thomas Aquinas would put it in terms of like wanting to know the cause of an effect that you see, right? And I think that that's something that children are naturally inclined to, just because they're experiencing the world for the first time. But it's not something that as adults we need to suddenly stop doing. There's always more. There's always more, right? And I think that especially in Catholic education, you have the fullness of that. Right. The thing that makes classical education such an important approach is because you're ultimately searching for the divine, right? If you look at Plato and Aristotle, right? They were searching for the divine, right? We have the fullness of that in Catholic revelation, the incarnation, right?
But you also have it in math.
And we have it in math, right?
All of the subjects, you had it,
Yep. And so being able to, being able to begin to see the coherence of all of reality, right? And ultimately Christ is the source of that, right? I think the classical approach is uniquely able to help students see that well.
Well, this has been great. JP, thank you so much for coming by and telling us a little bit more about CLT and talking to us about what you're seeing in classical liberal arts. And we'll be talking with you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we're back at NCEA Day 2, and I'm here with Dr. Arthur
I
Hippler.
worked hard for that evil PhD.
I know. Dr. Arthur Hippler, who is a specialist in theology and who is a veteran teacher of theology.
20 years at Providence Academy.
20 years at Providence Academy. And so I want to talk to Dr. Hippler today about teaching theology integrally. And so what I mean by integrally, really the question is, why is theology important for the other subjects and disciplines that are taught in a school?
So I think it's important to understand that a Catholic school is not simply like a public or another private school, and now we insert a religion class. So everything in math or science or lit or history, it's pretty much what they would get at the public school down the road. But now we add this this religion class, almost like I've heard the criticism. There are a number of Catholic schools. They're like public schools with Catholic sprinkles on top. And yeah, to have an integrated program means that you recognize that theology is a real body of knowledge. That even though there are things in theology that ultimately are mysteries, like the Trinity, the Eucharist, the Incarnation, the central claims that are being made about God's existence, his attributes, his providence, that human beings share in divinity in some way in terms of having a part of their soul that's spiritual. In other words, mind and will, what we say in theological language, being made to the image and likeness of God. Those are all things that are knowable. They're not just believed. They can be argued. A case can be made for them. So that, as Newman says, when you remove something from a curriculum that is a real body of knowledge that's related to other bodies of knowledge, those bodies of knowledge are damaged.
Yes.
So to give a couple examples, if in fact, well, put it this way, in a biology class, there's always some number of 16, 17-year-olds. They know that that species they haven't always existed, that you find fossils, and at one point there were dinosaurs and now there aren't. At one point there weren't mammals and now there are.
Yeah.
So they know that if by evolution you mean some kind of development of species over time, that's a fact, or some kind of development. But then they've got this side of their brain, okay, well, I've grown up in the church and I believe the Bible, so somehow God is nudging that along or pushing that along. They've got some kind of directed idea.
Yeah.
If in fact there is no God, there's no reason to believe there's a God, then what you have in what we would call evolution is a series of accidents.
Right.
That these things just develop by accident over time, that there's no purpose to it. It's kind of one thing after another.
Right.
And so ultimately human existence is something that has come about by chance.
Right.
So if there's no God or there's nothing to know about him, it isn't like biology simply remains the same.
Right.
Does biology related to God's providence, that he made these things and there's some kind of development or unfolding of species over time, and so man is the intended result of that process?
Right.
Or is this all matter, energy, protein chains in some kind of tidal pools getting zapped by lightning? Is it all that? So it makes a difference whether or not there's some kind of provident God behind life on earth, or it's all chance. To use one other example, I think of how it is that when I had a law studies class in my public school, we had a lawyer who would come in from every branch of law. So we had a corporate lawyer, defense attorney, prosecuting attorney. The one I remember the best is this constitutional law lawyer. And he came in and he asked, when, after the Civil War, the 14th, 15th, 16th Amendment, were blacks receiving rights that they did not have before, or were they having the rights recognized that they always had, but now finally the government was recognizing? Which is it? And all of us said they're having the rights recognized. They're human beings. So, and this constitutional law lawyer told us, no, you're absolutely wrong. They are getting their rights from the government because that's where all rights come from.
Right.
There's no such thing as natural right. There's no such thing as natural law. There's no such thing as natural justice.
Right.
So the only way that you can have rights is if they're given to you by the government. Now, I hadn't read Hobbes, so I didn't realize that was all social contract stuff. But notice, if you think, like in the language of the Declaration, man is endowed by his creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That's a view that presupposes there's some kind of God, that nature, God is the author of nature. But if you remove that, it's not like law or just laws, unjust laws. That just remains what it ever was.
Yeah.
No, it completely changes whether you can have such a thing as an unjust law.
And like Newman talks about, it leads to an impoverishment of that field. So whether you're talking about history or whether you're talking about law or science, it's all impoverished by that.
Yeah.
So, sorry. Another question that I have for you is talk to me a little bit about what your favorite books are to teach theology to high school students. What are they responding to? What makes them go, whoa, when you're teaching?
So the book that every year comes at the end of sophomore year and that I probably hear about the most is C.S. Lewis's The Screwtape Letters.
Yes.
Because it forces the kid to get a perspective on themselves that they don't have.
Right.
How do I look to an enemy spirit who's trying to damn me?
Right.
That's something they can't imagine. And because Lewis gives them that perspective, it allows them to take the moral and spiritual life seriously in a way that very often they weren't able quite to do before.
Right.
So that's a book that I will hear about from seniors. I will hear about it from our graduates who will go back and read it.
Right.
And probably probably a close second would be Augustine's Confessions.
Okay.
And that is a book that's a kind of a slow cooker book.
Right, yeah.
It's not a book that they like right away. They like the Screwtape Letters right from the first letter.
Right.
But it's more like the pot roast.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
if you just try to bite into it right away, it's going to be pretty tough.
Yeah.
So you gotta have it in the slow bake in the oven for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And so it takes a while for them to get into the world of Augustine and more. And the thing that's hard for them, Augustine is, because it's this inner dialogue, they're really brought into an interior life.
Okay.
And that's the part of the Christian life that's in a way the most important part. That's what a life of prayer is. It's having an interior life.
Right.
But it's the one that is the most alien
Right.
to the beginner or to the
right.
outsider.
Right.
Because you think of Christianity being doing certain things, but there's no doing certain things unless there's the interior life behind it that animates it and makes that happen.
Right.
So it's slow, but there are kids that I think by the end of that, they finally come to appreciate the inner world of the faith.
That's right.
In a way that you've gotten beyond, like, here are the commandments, here are the laws of the church, and so there's this inner dialogue you're having with God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Hippler, I know you have to go give a talk, and so I'm very grateful that you stopped by to chat with us today, and I want to talk to you more at length another time about teaching theology. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
All right, we are back, day 2, NCEA, and I have here with me today my old friend, John DeJak, who is the director of the Secretariat for Catholic Education at the USCCB. And we're really excited to have you here today because we want to talk with you a little bit about what you are finding really exciting in Catholic education. You travel the country, you see all sorts of schools, you're talking with all sorts of people. What do you see that really sets your mind on fire?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I love Catholic International, of course. But that's a great question. There's a lot to be said about that, I think.
Yeah.
First of all, the people who are committed to Catholic Ed
and
who are in Catholic Ed is a beautiful thing. They're come for the benefits and the money, right? But no, I mean, so you obviously love the Lord, and you want to bring this to the next generation of students. So that's the first thing, right? But also what's very exciting, I think, is a recovery of what the church has always done in terms of her educational mission at every level. And that's and one of those things I would posit or I would propose is a recovery of a poetic understanding of things.
Okay, say more about that.
Not in the sense that we're running around reciting poetry all the time, but rather it's a form of intuitive knowledge that the human person is endowed with by Almighty God that I think modern education has neglected over the years. We're very focused on the instrumental or the utilitarian. How do I get to the next level? How do I get this job? How do I get into correct. How do I get into Catholic International University? You know, that sort of thing. Or Harvard, or pick your poison, right? And it's very much, I just need to get to this next step, and it doesn't encounter reality with the fullness that one ought to.
Yeah, I'm seeing this more and more with the schools that I'm dealing with. There's just a longing to go deeper, the desire to go back to the well. Yes. To retrieve from our deep tradition the things that have always been there, but that we can use in new ways to greet the challenges that are before us, for sure. You were an administrator in schools. You've taught in schools for a long time, and I think one question I want to ask you is, what is your favorite book to teach? Or what book do you wish every teacher read?
That's a great question. It depends on the level, I think. It depends on the level of the student.
Yeah.
High school, so many good things. I think you can always draw just fundamental human experiences, virtues, values from the classics like the Odyssey, right? Yeah. Our life is a journey, right? We have challenges. We overcome things. We have beautiful moments where we enjoy each other, conversation, deep things, right? And amidst the good things of the earth.
Right.
And it's a foretaste of eternity, really.
That's very poetic.
I guess so. But it's also, so there is that.
Right.
Now, people will criticize, well, how is that? You need a teacher to be able to bring this out. You can't just give the Odyssey to a kid and expect him to get it.
Right.
This is something that one is brought to through teachers. Another thing, though, I think, another book, since you asked, it would be for the more mature student, I think, in the terms of high school. It'd be the senior or the junior, perhaps. And I would say Brideshead Revisited. And this is why I would say this. It is a beautiful story. And again, you need a teacher because one has to be brought into England post-World War II to understand this, or during World War II, rather, to understand this. And understand the kind of the culture and the history of whatever else. But it's a story about God's never letting go of us, or never not wanting us to be with him, right? And so we may sin, we may stray, whatever else. There's that beautiful image of Chesterton's, the twitch upon the thread.
That's
right?
exactly what I was thinking about.
Yeah. And we can be so lost in our minds, think I am not worth redeeming, but God doesn't think that way.
Right.
And to give people the hope and to give people the interior conviction and confidence that they are worth something, and that God thinks they are worth something, and they are worth dying on a cross, even if that was the only person in the world who needed it.
Right. I think the reason I asked you about the books was because I think these are the things that open up poetic knowledge, right? These aren't simply, things that you can take a Quizlet on and ace the test. You have to immerse yourself in that world. You have to you really give yourself over to the text in attentiveness in a way that you might not have to if you're just memorizing things to pass a test. And so, I appreciate both of those books, and they're my favorites. So with that, I know you're a busy man, and I wanted to say thank you for spending a little bit of time with us, and I'll be talking with you more because you're on our advisory board, so you have to give us advice about how to be better. But we're really glad that you could stop by and see us here today.
Thanks so much, Ann.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right, we're at NCEA day 3, and we're all really tired because it's been intense and packed. And today I'm here with Dr. Matt Gerlach, who is headmaster at Chesterton Academy here in Minneapolis, St. Paul. He is at the mothership, the original Chesterton Academy, right?
Yes.
Yes. And he is going to talk to us today about mission in Catholic schools. He gave a wonderful talk here earlier at NCEA about mission integrity, and I would just want to pick his brain a little bit about that. So, Matt, you and I have known each other a long time, and you have great expertise in this area. So, what can schools do to grow or to preserve mission integrity?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. The simple answer is they can do everything they're doing now, but with a different lens and a different emphasis, right? So, yeah, so keep your eye on mission at all times, right? So if you're dealing with a discipline issue,
Okay.
what's your mission? How do you approach it as a Catholic educator and as a Catholic school? Because that should be different than if you were not Catholic,
Right.
right? And so, and that has a couple dimensions to it, facets, right? So one is like just having a solid anthropology, like who is the human person?
Right.
And if this young person here, should a sophomore act like a sophomore? Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't expect the sophomore to act like a senior or a 22-year-old or a 20. Yeah. Executive function is not there fully, or maybe much at all at times. And so it's like, okay, so how do we look at this young man, this young woman, and what they're dealing with from this kind of Catholic lens, right? From in light of the truth of who the human person is.
Right, and their development.
And their which means yes, they are developmental. God didn't make us like the angels. We have one choice, and we are locked into our nature and our choice and our destiny. But it should unfold gradually, and that means that we're going to make mistakes and learn from them. And so do we as educators take that seriously and partner with parents, but also like actually engage them in their freedom.
Yeah.
As intelligent, as rational beings who have maybe underdeveloped, emotional regulation and virtue and things like that, moral virtue, but at the same time, they have the capacity. And in fact, how is that going to come alive for them unless they're invited to take ownership of that and their own destiny, their own choices, their consequences for themselves, right? So I think that's one of the core ideas is like, what's our understanding of the human person? How does our formation that we offer at the school really cater to that, right? And make sure that we're forming, not malforming students, because how we react to their choices, tells them a lot about what we think of them, and the truth of who they are. And maybe we think up here one thing, but we act differently in our kind of emotional reaction to their. So that's one thing, of course. Another thing is like I always talk about like we do early engagement enrollment. So we years before the family ever puts in an application, we're trying to educate parents, right? So that we have to be clear about what our mission is and what that looks like through every facet of the school. And we have to be very clear about how we articulate that to parents to educate them on what kind of Catholic education do you want for your kids? Is this a good fit for you? And is this something that sits well? And sometimes, they change their mind about what they're looking for, and they're like, I really like that. I thought I wanted more of a STEM approach. And it's like, I like that you do math and science, but you also do the arts and humanities, theology and philosophy. And so I think what we have to do as Catholic schools is have a vision of what the education is that we're trying to provide, an integrated curriculum and that overall formation model, such that we offer compelling and distinctive opportunity for families, but also educating them so that when they come, they're going to be good partners in that. And whether the students are choosing it for themselves at that point is a question. It's hard to tell sometimes, especially in a headmaster interview, where the right answer is yes, I could, I'm interested, yes, I want to learn, yes, but are the parents on board, and will they be good partners? Because they're the primary educators. Are they doing mission at home? Do they have a family mission? And does the school's mission reflect, correspond and correlate?
Can I ask a question about that? Yeah. So you talk about family mission in engaging parents. Do you encourage them to develop a family mission, or do you have a sort of parent education about mission as part of your community outreach or?
Yes. Yeah. So we have opportunities, especially in the early engagement open houses that we have, where people sign up and they come. We try to present them. Here's what you can do now, and what we expect of families to be doing at some level, in some ways, to kind of invite them into, if they haven't begun doing that, they really need to be thinking seriously about it. So yeah, one of the things that I talk about with parent partnership is, do you have a family mission statement that reflects, the deepest core values of that at home, what you're trying, and concretely how you live those out, to an understanding of like, oh, this is how we deal with technology and devices, because this is who we are as Catholics, and how those can shape our understanding and our response, our choices around, what it means to be human, and who God is, and what we're called to for beatitude, right, for our ultimate fulfillment. And so. Yeah, so that's a really important part, is getting a sense of in fact, writing a family mission statement. We have our school mission statement, so you'd say to families, what's your family mission? Do you have, even just between the two of you as a married couple, or a single parent, do you have an idea of what you're really shooting for, and how you're taking steps intentionally, day in and day out, because it is a daily effort. There's going to be fits and starts. There's going to be sidewinding, meandering around at times. But do you come back to that regularly together and as a family, so that, say homeschoolers, when we were homeschooling, we had a family mission statement. We called it John Paul II, homeschool. And then we had our mission statement there, and we still have that to go to. You have a family prayer, that we pray together. Do the families pray together? Do they have a culture and communal activities as a family, even as they give free time for, everyone has free time to engage in the things they're interested in doing individually?
One last question. I don't want you to put you on the spot to have you give your whole talk all over again, what are the 4 pillars, et cetera. But mission drift.
Yes.
Is a kind of ever constant threat. And what can schools and school leaders do to kind of stave off all of the pressures on schools to drift from their mission?
Oh, man. Yeah, there's a lot there, but I would just say that this room is a big red flag for me. Not to bash NCEA, because I think it's great to bring vendors around, but I'm getting bombarded as a headmaster because I signed up for NCEA. I've got innumerable emails coming from vendors, and I'm not looking for that necessarily. I might be looking for some interaction, some kind of counsel and guidance. But I have so many ideas right now. I don't need more ideas. I need time and the right people around me, my staff, my faculty, to execute. Right. And so, AI, all these things are really hot topics. We need education, understanding. I don't need a new technology or, as much as what's the culture we're trying to create here, and how do we do that day in and day out as a school? And these things can help. And not to say that everything here is illegitimate, but this whole exhibit hall, in some ways represents a very great temptation to schools. Not just monetary, because that's huge, because some of these vendors cost a lot. If you start stacking it, it's a lot of money, and you're trying to keep tuition down and be good stewards of, the support you've received through donations. Be very intentional about what who you engage with as a partner for the goals that you have, that should be shaped by the mission and your formation model. Right. If you're going to do AI, if you're going to do something with AI and academic integrity, for example, do you understand what you're shooting for, and not just letting maybe a secular or even a Catholic, company coming at you saying, here's what we're going to do, but make sure that it's shaped by your intentionality and your goals.
So it sounds to me like you're saying that you have to have the fundamentals in place first before you start looking at partnering with any other vendor or any other sort of tool that could come in, and without you realizing it, kind of quietly start reshaping how you do things. Okay.
Yeah. So I would just say any of the hot topics of the day, right, in education could easily become an obsession and a focus that then you forget what you're at the core you're about. This is important because it has an impact on the formation of the students. And so if you're not clear about what your formation is and what you're striving for, you're not going to be able to guide and direct those tools that exist, in the proper ways. And so then you're going to be, and it's not a bad intention, or it's so much as like or giving into an evil. It's more like, oh, this good thing over here, and then next thing you know, you've forgotten to talk about the core of your mission and your formation, or bringing it back to that. So I always talk about threading your mission through every facet, every activity of the school, and always bringing it back and taking a step back from the heat of the moment, of whatever it is in the day or the week or the cycle of the school year, to say what are we doing here and what are we trying to accomplish and how do we fulfill our mission as a school.
Well, Matt, you're a man of a lot of wisdom. Thanks for sharing with us today, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks.